Hi, I'm Julianne Warren. I am a poet, scholar, and advocate with a PhD in ecology from the University of Illinois and an MFA in creative writing from the Institute of American Indian Arts. And I am living in customary lands that are unceded of the lower Tanana Dene people, Fairbanks, Alaska. Legitimacy. Euro-American intellectual Robert Pogue Harrison writes, "Only the dead can grant us legitimacy. Left to ourselves, we're all bastards. In exchange for legitimacy, which humans need and crave more than anything else, we surrender ourselves to their dominion." This is a reflection on that passage in three parts. Part one, if not surrender, when a woman witnesses how a father tells his daughters one by one that he will disown them if they become pregnant without a husband, she recognizes his threat as premised in possessiveness. The woman also recognizes their mother as compliant. She too must have known herself to be owned first by her late father and now as a wife and her daughter's role model. The daughters hear their father repeatedly announce, "I am the head of this household." This father's father was insistent too, not attentive, and this father recalls as a boy picking a neighbor's flowers as a Mother's Day gift and she marching him over to apologize. This father recollects a rare childhood encouragement, being praised by his grandmother for saving pennies in his piggy bank. The insistent grandfather passed on from congestive heart failure. When the emergency room nurse cut off his shirt, one granddaughter witnessed scissors piercing a pack of Marlboro cigarettes in his chest pocket. The next day, she brought Grandpa a photo of his predeceased wife to keep him bedside company. To be heard above the beeps of heart monitoring and his lungs rattle, the granddaughter leaned into his ear and whispered, "I love you." I grew up afraid of becoming homeless and alone if I refused the patriarchal, colonialist, white supremacist, profiteering, self-declared, nature-protecting family heritage I was raised in. I grew up with the systemic privileges of an able-bodied Euro-American middle-class U.S. citizen utilizing so-called fossil fuels and other lives objectified as resources, including legacies of enslaved human beings stolen from different societies of Africa, Igbo, Congo, Wolof, more. I've been nourished by land that my dead ancestors fought and murdered to steal from different societies of North America, including Munsee-speaking Lenape, Mohican, the Haudenosaunee member Cayuga Nation still pursuing their land back. My great-grandfather cashed in a Revolutionary War grant of Cayuga territory, funds supporting the family feed business in our Catskills dairy farming village, now rife with parks and wilderness areas. I grew up surrounded by histories of other heritages that no one talked about, that were intentionally silenced by claims of mine. I cannot cancel any ancestral heritage that brought forth my existence. Without all my dead relations, ancient and modern, neither I nor others would exist as we do. And we, the inheritors, sustain the dead in biological DNA and/or cultural repetitions, if not stories. With maturity, portals. The world is worlds, with refusals of many proposals of my most proximate forebears. I fall out of step with generations of nationalist patriots, church members, and family assets. My father ushers me an apostate out the door, I find, however, still held open by the inalienable law of being in relation. What can love mean if not surrender to the unjust and dangerous heritage, the totalitarian impulses in which I was incubated and for decades imbibed and regurgitated? Holding need and craving close, there also are no guarantees any surrenders to unfamiliars will become well received. Yet, may we find one another. Part 2, Recognizing Fossil Relations. As I begin to listen, I recognize fossil hydrocarbons as in relation to, and not as resources. I listen to the crack of a plastic water bottle. I listen with intuitions as a human animal, as influenced by Euro-Darwinian claimed evolutionary ecological lineages, as moved by Métis anthropologist and researcher artist Zoe Todd, who with many human and more than human collaborators teaches how ancient fossil beings and fossil kin, as she calls them, are objectified within my heritage and thus proposed, in her words, as destroyable entities. I listen as Gwich'in Vuntut, then Chief Dana Tizya Tram, explains how the Arctic coastal plain he knows as the Jikwatsan Guandai Gudlit, the sacred place where life begins, and others call the refuge or 1002, is, quote, this huge ancient ecosystem in which we are tied, caribou-driven, thousands of generations of caribou and human in communion, versus an oil field economy, a sacrificing, quote, misappropriation of what the term energy truly is. Some rookie questions arise. Allow me just one. On Dominion, have fossil beings formed a ruthless movement to divest from human notions that freedom comes from being surrendered to, but never surrendering? Part 3. The dead to whom I surrender. I surrender to the wordless dead, to the dominion of exploded stars. I surrender to the earliest earth, to lost names for the planet, and to words. I surrender to Earth's oceans, to eons ago, cyanobacteria, liberators of oxygen. I surrender to oxygen. I surrender to tiny photosynthetic bacteria who blued Earth's sky and redded iron-rich soils, to this sky and these soils. I surrender to those beings for whom a crescendo of oxygen was poison, the ones with ongoing legacies and the ones blinking out of this, if not other possible worlds. I surrender to other possible worlds whose movements have passed on. I surrender to trilobites and to the smallest terrestrial plants and spineless animals as old as what someone has called the Cambrian period. I surrender to the swampy forests of the Carboniferous and to each and every form of plankton who themselves surrendered to tides and currents. I surrender to tides and currents. I surrender to the ages of unconsumed bodies dwelling deep carbon carts of wet rock, bright air, afterlives, breathless, hot and pressured, now fossilized. I surrender to the atmosphere these ancients bequeathed, the once lighter weave of molecular clothing to which my body fit for keeping cooler in sun's heat. I surrender to the fossil beings respiring post-afterlives, bonds broken and remade carbon dioxide forms multiplied, floating earth and warmed down, falling rain, guttering this winter here in this boreal town of Fairbanks, Alaska. I surrender to Alaska as a future state expired, to its elder trees, poplar, spruce, and birch, to the past seasons of Tanana waters flowed into the Yukon, to the ice, to the permafrost. I surrender to those king salmon, not all of them, thankfully, unreturned up the Yukon from the Bering Sea. I surrender to generations of human beings, sharing respectful counsel with the fish, Lower Tanana, Koyukon, Athabaskan, Gwich'in poet Princess Dajrai Johnson says, can't you see, we need each other, salmon and human. From the river to the sea, as Palestinians rally, I open as to a gift to the dominion of all the dead, tending calls for justice in their heirs, still embodied languages, to the loving who need and crave legitimacy, as revolving on triumph, peace again, never genocide, eyes glazed with dreams, fury, a tongue spins, a slice of lemon, salivate, salt the memory, a meaty plate of birdsong bound with breath, even if interrupted, not left to ourselves.